The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Fourth Book. Quest for Uncle Kurt. Chapter 34. Seconds later, I recovered the consciousness. Neither sings of the deafening sound or the diabolic scintilla. The crepuscular light still subsisted for what I could verify, without any doubt, that we were in front of a completely different place to the glen where Schaefer camped. Immediately came to my memory all that occurred, the attack of the mortal buzz, and the feud, thanks to the dogs Davis. I was still alive by miracle. But where I was? Because that, evidently was not Chining, but a shore of a river, a brief beach at the feet of the slope of a hill. I was seated on the floor, still sustaining in the hands the now inert leashes of the dogs Davis. At centimeters from my feet, the rumorous river intonated the melody of the nature. A blaze against the hillside showed me the lepers, collecting firewood and feeding an improvised stove. Carl von Grossen and Escadville had stood up, and were contemplating the scene in silence, as besotted. When the eyes of the Standartenführer encountered with mine eyes, he reacted. "Von Superman, Gott sei Dank. Where are we? What happened to the others?" I incorporated and responded him with crude honesty. "I do not know. I ignore what place is this. With security we are very far from the campsite, but at least we are alive. Because, if I am convinced of something, is that who are not with us now, must have died in the glen. Who could survive to that attack of the demons? If even the Kalika monks, who are experts in that kind of black magic, feared to die inevitably." In that moment the three of us remembered the monks, and we searched them with the gaze. The 8 were next to the fire that they had turned on, protected by enormous rocks, and were looking at us, at the same time with tranquility. Carl and Esker approached them. I wanted to do the same, but the leashes impeded me to do it. With horror, I discovered that one of the dogs had died. The other by his side emitted periodic painful wailings. If I owed my life to someone in this world, a part of my parents was to those dogs, so I felt comprehensively affected for the loss of one of them. I left the survivor with his piteous howls, bereaved requiem for the absent couple, and I approached to the group. Without courtesy, I interpolated to the Shrivirya. "How is that one of the dogs Davis has died?" Had not assured me the Guru Vasaraga that both constituted an archetypal couple, the manifested synthesis of a pair of opposed principles, whose existence had to be necessarily simultaneous? If that was true, why are not dead both of them? "Be patient, son of Shiva," advised the monk compassionately, "and remember that these dogs are lepers, mental creations of the magicians of the Kala circle. Therefore, they are not subjected to natural laws, but to the will of the gurus. I said you that since some years ago, even if our order knew the secret of the dogs Davis, they had never been projected until now, because there was none one initiate as you, capable to control them beyond Kla and Ekla. Hence, we lacked of practical information about what would happen at being realized by a Shivachulk. It means that we didn't know how they were going to behave in this stage of the Kali Yuga. The last time that the dogs Davis traveled around the earth was in the Atlantis, thousands of years ago. Evidently, this Iron Age has debilitated in some way their flying power, and one of them resulted affected by the force of the Derigi. But, if we didn't know how much they will live, otherwise, I can respond you why one of them has continued alive after the flight Lunsvady. It was due to the particular laws that reigned their reproduction. You've reasoned well, but you didn't contemplate the laws of reproduction. At being a perfect couple, archetypally equilibrated, the 2 dogs, in fact, should have died together. But the law of the reproduction established by the gurus demands that before the disintegration, the couple beget and give birth to another pair of dogs Davis. The process would be then the next. The death of any of them will mean the automatic metamorphosis of the other in an androgynous exemplar. Is as if one of the archetypical principles, which was manifested outside, be incorporated inside of the survivor. and the one who lives will carry in the bosom the germ of a new couple of dogs Davis, which will grow, and will born then. So, after the delivery, the old exemplar will be disintegrated fatally. Do you understand now why one of them is alive? I assented, relieved at knowing that in a little time, I would recover the couple of dogs Davis. Well, added Shriviria, then, don't forget that in this period, while the androgynous dog is dedicated to gestate the new couple, you must call him with the name of Runner, because is the unity of Kla and Ekla. I assented again, because that was certainly logic. On that, exploded von Grossen. For God's sake, von Superman. Always the accursed dogs. Are you worried for the death of a dog? And our comrades? I have been informed that they have died too. Well, you should be bereaved for them. And you don't know where we are neither. That I was trying to inquire to the Tibetans when you interrupted me to talk about the condemned mastiffs. I decided to not respond to the unfair accusations of von Grossen. We don't know anything about the place where the Shivachulk has brought us, interjected Shriviria. He must respond, because only he knows the order that gave to the dogs Davis. The expression of the countenance of von Grossen, when decomposed at verifying that the matter of the dogs was unavoidable. I didn't have to reflect to expose something that intrigued me since I recovered consciousness in such speech. To Xining. I ordered the dogs to go to Xining. It was the first place that occurred to me, surely, because the two monks who guided the Hellites affirmed that, from there they will help us to arrive to Shanghai. He did not explain me why that dogs Davis didn't guide us to Xining. Oh, how strange is the mind of the Shivachulk! Exclaimed Shriviria, who could not conceive that my acts were simply stupids, as they were in reality. If you wanted to go to Shanghai, why don't send the dogs to guide us directly thither, instead of requesting them the town square of Xining, located 2,000 kilometers before? Incomprehensible are the designs of the gods. Because, now that the dogs Davis are in process of reproduction, you could not employ them for a flight Lunsviper anymore. Only the future puppies, someday, will take you through time and space. Of course, that now we know where we are. What Xining have you translated in your order? How what Xining? I don't understand. What are you talking about? I declared, fearing to hear what would come. Of course, son of Shiva, explained the Shriviria innocently. The order demanded to go to Xining Fu, or to Xining Ho, that is to say, to the city of Xining, or to the river of Xining. I released an oath. Why, I had been so little precise at defining the imposed destiny of the air travel of the dogs Davis. The answer was obvious. Because the order was formulated on a critical moment, in middle of a tremendous physical disorder that avoided me to reason enough. In such terrible circumstance I forgot everything. I not described with precision the target, because I supposed that unconsciously that the dogs would comprehend it, that they would interpret my wishes exactly. And the truth was very different. The dogs were lookers, yitams, magical machines, projected by the will of steel of the magicians, and that required the correct control of their functions. Certainly that, I not specified if it was Xining Fu or Xining Ho, I confessed annoyed. The Kalika monk meditated for a second and said smiling. So, it is very probable that we are next to the river Xining. At receiving the order, the dogs Davis realized that existed two different objectives with the same name. They elected, by motives that would belong to detail, the oldest objective that corresponded to that name, apparently, the river. And, that ambiguity would explain also the death of one of the dogs. The cause would be the dilemma to which the opposed principles were submitted, that worked as if a logic wedge would have tried to break the absolute unity of the archetype dog. I think that the problem resides in the grades of reality of the things in game. By one part, the dogs Davies not constituted a perfect couple, they could not be that, in this stage of the Kelly era, and they exhibited a small grade of disequilibrium. On the other part, the river Xining results to be a little more real, inside the illusion of Maya, that the city of Xining Consequence: the docks Davis are situated in front of a dilemma, and they are forced to choose. Due to the supposed disequilibrium, one of the dogs tends towards Shining Fu, and the other tends towards Shining Ho. As magically the real destiny is the one that corresponds to more real name, just one of the dogs arrives to Shining Ho, where we are, while the other dog is disintegrated to avoid the impossible alteration of the archetype. And, as the dogs Davis can't exist but as a couple, the present androgynous will be disintegrated too after the reproduction. Therefore, the docks have concurred to the river Shining, to which would correspond the current that passes before us. Admitted von Grossen, who was finally starting to be geographically oriented. So, Kameraden, I will discuss the status situation. Elements in favor of our strategy. A. 3 Germans and 8 Tibetans, members of the Operation First Key, are still alive. B. It is possible that the city of Shining be located near from here, and it is probable that of it depends our definitive salvation, if we achieve to spend the night in these conditions. Element against our strategy. A. We experienced 5 casualties, 3 Germans and 2 Tibetans, a part of the 5 carriers, and all the equipment. B. If really this site is located at the east of the Lake Cook-Norrit, imply more than 1,000 kilometers away from the Valley of the Immortal Demons, what turns impossible for the moment, to return and inspect, or rescue the bodies and materials. Conclusion. It is almost secure that the effectives in charge of the operational Tweston have run the same luck of the members of the Operation First Key, that is to say, they are dead or disappeared. This conclusion puts end to the Operation First Key, and imposes us our delicate obligation to explain convincingly to our superiors the events occurred in the campsite of Ernst Schaefer. Karl von Grossen looked at me significantly, as saying that the main responsible of the explanations would be me. His last words were, "Considering the diabolic attack that we have suffered in that infernal valley, at the light of the orders received from Germany, and the structure of the Operation First Key, I have extracted some conclusions that I will communicate you, in character strictly personal and confidential. I believe, gentlemen, that our leaders of Germany had a very approximated idea about what would happen in the Tibet, if Kurt von Sabeman was integrated to operational Tweston. Clearer, I think that they, Hitler, Himmler, Heydrich, Rudolf Hess, and God knows who else, knew that determined enemies would react with extreme violence at discovering to von Sabeman. Enemies that are perhaps extraterrestrial beings, possessors of terrible weapons, incomparable to any earthly arsenal. If they knew what could happen, why they permitted to the enemy to shut us in a mortal trap? This is a question for which I have none answer. I intuit that they wanted to verify concretely the efficacy of von Sabeman to cause the reactions of the demons of Changshambala, and perhaps they underestimated the enemy. Perhaps they thought that the wide fraternity would close the damned doors of their lair, and discarded the possibility that the demons would try to kill us. Whatever could it be, I am persuaded that von Sabeman will never reveal us the secret that inflames the demons. In sum, I consider the Operation First Key concluded in this moment. I dispose the immediate return to Germany. Are you agree, Kameraden, with the framework of the situation and the conclusions? What else could we do, asked Phil and me, but to accept unconditionally the decisions of von Grossen? The Tibetan monks, by their part, never discussed the orders, and, once again, were disposed to collaborate with our plans. We would leave at dawn. Meanwhile, we formed a circle around the fire, and embraced each other to transfer us heat, posture that the dog runner adopted too. Notwithstanding the raining cold at the dawning, all achieved to sleep, due to the great psychical tiredness that we accumulated on the last days. We had none blanket nor coat, just what we were wearing, and for this reason, we tightened each other to avoid the congealment, although it was evident that such place was not cold as the summits of the Mount Kunlun. And about the weapons, we just conserved the daggers and the luger of Karl, Esker and me, and the 2 machine pistols Smiser, that we had crossed on our bags. For this terrible weapon, we just counted with 2 loaders each one, the same as the Lugers. Insufficient to move off a country in civil war, but always better than nothing. All the Kalakas, on the contrary, had their daggers, scimitars, and quivers with the 50 arrows. Otherwise, neither food, nor water, nor munitions of any type, except for what we carried at the moment in what we fled from the disastrous glen. Were few things, very few if we would have been much more lost in Tibet. They resulted enough to arrive to Xiningfu. Numbed of cold, since the dawn, we marched parallel to the river Xininghu. Karl von Grossen, surprised us all, at extracting from the interior of his jacket the letter carrier of canvas, and unfold a map of the west region of China. And from his pockets, as inexhaustible Pandora's boxes, appeared the inseparable compass, a scale metric collapsible ruler, and a capilla. Useless elements, except the compass and the map. Before leaving, I made a stone barrow, and buried the unfortunate dog Deva. I was not accustomed to pray, but in that occasion, I concentrated some minutes and elevated myself to the sphere of the gods, employing the scrotra rame, to achieve that they could hear me. Then, I prayed to Wetten, to him personally, and I requested him a vessel of meat for the feet of Heinz, Hans, and Klester. Yes, I said to the gods, this time they should celebrate for those 3 warriors of the eternal Germany, receive them as heroes in the Valhalla. And, if it is possible, they would have to make a place for the dog Deva, the dog of Shiva that transported the warriors flying as Vayu, the wind. Originated in the most meridional systems of Nanna, the Xininghu, descend to the south, and disembogues in the Tatunho, after passing under the bridge of the Great Wall, and bars the walls of the city of Xining. The Tatunho, by its part, continues to the southeast, and mix its waters with the Hongho, or Yellow River in the confluence of Lenke. Around noon, we arrived to a small fortified hamlet, and surrounded by rudimentary cultivations. It was the Hwang, one of the Muse of Path Chanlan. In the village, there was a Buddhist temple, many inns for pilgrims and merchants, and a free market of respectable dimensions. The groom belonged to the caller circle, and we went to his establishment swiftly. There, we reassured us, at the same time that we took the first hot meal in 24 hours. According to his inform, the men of the Prince of Kuknor searched us for some days, and then, they returned to the Tibet. It would be difficult that they come back unless that someone convoke them, what would not occur if we worked with prudence, and don't let us be seen. Anyhow, the power of the insurgent Tibetans reached only to Hwang, settlement situated at the northern side of the Great Wall, in a region traditionally disputed by Mongols and Tibetans. A few kilometers ahead, behind the Great Wall, were the Chinese province of Kans, and the city of Xining, where the power of the caller circle was considerable. Of course, that, if in Xiningfu, we didn't have to be afraid of the Tibetans' persecution, whereas, we would have to avoid being involved in the continuous revolts of the inflamed Chinese factions. For this time, the logistics and tactic remained in hands of the Kalakas, better knowers of the terrain, and possessors of powerful infrastructure of support. Their plan, otherwise, was extremely simple. We'd overnight in the stable, which seemed a palace for us after the last night, and in the morning, the Chinese and his son would take us to Xininghu, hidden in 2 chariots of 4 oxen each one. The Kalika monks told us that they were planning to come back to the Tibet, after that we'd be out from the danger towards Shanghai. They would not return directly to Bhutan, because they would try to find their 2 fellows, who had remained with the Hellites, in the threshold of the Valley of the Immortal Demons. Even if they not disposed of dogs Davis, they knew a lot about the magic of the Kikor, and that the Lost Valley was located in the west, in the lands of the Mother Queen Kuan Yin. Either through the east, as we did, or by the west, they would find the way to enter, and rescue their comrades, or, perhaps, avenge them. Then, if they returned, they would retire to the monastery of Bhutan, or to another one belonging to the caller circle, to meditate about what happened in such adventure. They fought cheek by jowl, beside the Schwerwald. They were guided to the Valley of the Immortals by the Dox Davis, and participated on his flight Lungsviper. They were certainly fortunate, the gods had smiled to them, and was only left for them to retire to meditate and be grateful. I could not demur anything before that admirable decision, but Karl von Grossen thought different. He called to Shriviria and Bangai apart, and qualified them as deserters. Your mission, he said to them, will only conclude when those who know evaluate the results of the operation. And those persons, of course, were in Germany. To both of you then, corresponded to accompany us to our homeland, and present your valuable testimonies. Then, you would be free to return, and the SS would put at your service all the necessary means. As the monks hesitated, von Grossen pressed them morally, assuring them that, anyways they would have to accompany us to Shanghai, to officiate as Chinese interpreters, and, once there, would not be very difficult for them to embark towards Germany, which was almost as far as Bitan. But this was not true. Shriviria and the Gurkha, indeed, speak Chinese, but no one knew a word in Japanese, the idiom spoken by who occupied the half of China. On the contrary, Esker and I studied Chinese and Japanese in the career of Ostenführer of the Nepala, and both of us dominated the Mandarin and Japanese. But, anyhow, always existed the resource of the English language, discredited in Asia, but with which von Grossen, or any of us, could communicate. The universal idiom of Asia, as the sons of the Porphyrius Albion, would be the English, but the truth was that was only spoken by the colonial functionaries, and the sepoys of always, amongst the erudite members of the Asian peoples, being India, Nepal, Kashmir, Bhutan, China, Myanmar, etc. The English was resisted and remained commonly unknown, to not say hated and hidden. Even though we disapproved the attitude of von Grossen, neither Esker nor I belied his arguments. We observed smilingly, instead, how the two extraordinary initiates went little by little ceding in their positions. The truth was that, in reality, all wanted that the monks travel with us to Germany. When, at the next day, we left to Xining, they were almost convinced by the persuasive Standartenführer